This is a lesson in why we never, ever leave me alone in a bookshop. Hi, welcome, come on in. My name is Aoife and today I am taking you through a book haul that should not have happened. I'm trying to really cut down on all the books that I'm buying at the moment because the shelf behind me is genuinely full. There is no space for anything new. So I've been trying to go on a book buying ban and failed. I've bought a couple of physical books, but I've also bought a couple of books on my Kindle. So let's take a look at what I've bought. First up is Someone I Used to Know by Paige Toon. Paige Toon is one of my favourite romance authors. She's one of my favourite contemporary romance authors. I've read quite a few of her books by now, and I've read quite a few of her most recent reads. I've actually got her second to last book behind me on the shelf as well. The blurb says, at 15, George is the foster brother Leah never asked for. As the angry, troubled boy struggles to come to terms with his circumstances, Leah finds herself getting drawn closer to him. Theo has mysteriously left boarding school and is now at the local state school with Leah and George. When their worlds collide that summer, the three teenagers form a bond that they believe will be unbreakable. And then you jump forward in the timeline. Shocking news brings Leah back to Yorkshire, baby daughter in tow. But Amelia's father, Theo, isn't with them, and George has unexpectedly returned. After half a lifetime, have they healed the scars of their pasts? Will coming back home set their hearts in a new direction? I am so excited. I love a found family narrative, and that sounds exactly what I've got in store here. Next one up is Homestretch by Graham Norton. I read one of Graham Norton's books, A Keeper, back in maybe March of this year. I didn't really go in with a lot of expectations for it. I didn't really know what was going to happen in the book, and I completely fell in love with it. I think I finished it in one fell swoop in a reading sprint that I was doing with a couple of friends of mine. I think this is going to be the third of Graham Norton's books that I'm going to read. I've also read his first book, Holding, but I am genuinely so excited to see what happens here. From the blurb, it's 1987 and a small Irish community is shattered by a terrible accident. Young Connor is one of the survivors, but staying among the angry in the morning is more than he can bear. He leaves the only place he knows, taking his secrets with him. But the unspoken longings and regrets that have come to haunt those left behind will not be silenced, and before long, Connor will have to confront his past. I cannot wait to see this. I know that I'm going to really enjoy it because I've really enjoyed Graham's writing before. So let's see how I gel with this one. Next up is a non-fiction book, and it's The Comfort Book by Matt Haig. Matt can be a kind of a Marmite author, but for me, he genuinely calms me down and calms my mind so much, especially when my mind is racing, when I'm having a really big anxiety moment. I've already read quite a few of his books. I have read and loved Reasons to Stay Alive and Notes from a Nervous Planet, so I am genuinely really hoping that this one is going to take me through the funk that I'm going through right now. Back to fiction, and I have got Because of You by Dawn French. Yes, it has got a sticker on it, and I cannot remove it. This one starts off with two women who have come to a maternity hospital, and one of them leaves with a baby and one does not. And then you forward on 17 years later and you see how this is impacting their lives, what motherhood is like for the woman who left with the baby and what life is like for the woman who left with empty arms. I think this is going to be a very difficult read, especially because you're dealing with the topic of pregnancy loss, you're dealing with the topic of potentially a stillbirth or a miscarriage. And I am really interested to see how it's tackled here. The final physical book that I bought is Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. Sally became an auto-buy author for me after one book. So that is very high praise indeed. It is making me a little bit worried that maybe I won't gel with this as well as the stuff that I've read from her already, but I am very hopeful that I'm going to enjoy it. I know that she has quite a lot of steamy romances, and I am really excited to see what kind of steam level we're dealing with here. So, from the blurb, Ruthie Midiona is 24 going on 94. Oh my god, that sounds so much like me. I'm going to love this book. And fully committed to her job at a luxury retirement home. Keeping herself busy caring for the eccentric residents means that Ruthie can safely ignore her own life, what little there is of it. Teddy Prescott is practically allergic to a hard day's work. Oh my god, that is also me. When he rocks up as the retirement village's newest employee, Ruthie is less than impressed. The last thing that she needs is a distraction as irritating and handsome as the new selfish rich kid. Luckily for Ruthie, her favourite pair of mischievous residents need a new assistant to torture, so she hands over Teddy, ready for them to send him running. Except, Teddy may be about to surprise her, not just by surviving the old woman's antics, but by charming Ruthie so much she starts to remember that there's more to life than work. Could Teddy be far more than a simply and unwelcome distraction? From the blurb, I think I'm going to really enjoy this one. So those are all of the physical books that I have just recently bought. Let's go on to the ebooks that I got. And the first one was Contacts by Mark Watson. Mark Watson is one of my favorite comedians, but I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a funny book. In this book, you're following James, whose life has completely fallen apart. He is completely destitute with what he's going to do next, and he decides to take his own life. So he gets on the sleeper train from London to Edinburgh and sends out a group message to every single person in his phone book to tell them of his plans and basically to say goodbye to them. Then he puts his phone on airplane mode and does not look at it for the rest of the journey. When these messages come out, you're getting them to people that he hasn't spoken to in years, to his really close friends, to his parents with whom he's estranged, to his sister who's living in another country. I've listened to some of the audiobook of this, and it is completely heartbreaking. I already know that I'm going to need a packet of tissues beside me when I'm reading this book, but I am really excited to see how it ends up, because I have a feeling that there's going to be a little bit of a everybody has their place in the world and you make an impact to so many people kind of message to this story. Next up has kind of been described as if Bridgerton and Fleabag had a baby, and it is Reputation by Lex Croucher. I've heard of this book so many times, and I have watched all of Bridgerton and loved it completely, so I have a feeling that this is definitely going to be one of my new favourite books. I'm trying to get into a little bit more of historical romance, and I have a feeling that this might be the really great introduction that I need. Abandoned by her parents in favour of a sea view, middle-class Georgiana Ellers has moved to a new town to live with her dreary aunt and uncle. At a particularly dull dinner party, she meets the enigmatic Frances Campbell, a wealthy socialite and enchanting member of the in crowd. Through Frances and her friends, Georgiana is introduced to a new wild world of parties, drunken debauchery, mysterious young men with strangely alluring hands, and the sparkling upper echelons of Regency society. But high society isn't all it's cracked up to be, and the price of entry may be more than Georgiana is willing to pay. I cannot wait to read this one. The next ebook that I bought was All the Lonely People by Mike Gale. I was really intrigued by the blurb of this one. You have got Hubert, who is a pensioner and he's living alone. And he often calls his daughter, who's living in Australia, and keeps telling her he is living this perfect life. He's got loads of friends, he's going out and doing loads of things. But he's actually completely twisting the truth. He hasn't left his house in about 15 years and he barely even sees anybody. Unfortunately, his daughter is coming to visit from Australia, so he now has to fabricate this life that he has completely made up to tell her and make her think that he is doing a lot better than he actually is. The next book that I bought was Evening Class by Maeve Binchy, and as you can imagine, this book focuses on the people who are attending an evening class in a school. And here you're focusing on people who are attending Italian language classes and also the teacher that's taking the classes with them. I read my first Maeve Binchy book back in March of this year and I completely fell over heels in love with it. I know that I'm going to really enjoy this, and I know that there's a couple of people who I've asked what should I go to next when I'm looking for Maeve Binchy books who mentioned Evening Class to me, so I am very much anticipating how this one's going to go. And the final book that I bought was another non-fiction called Did You Hear Mammy Died by Seamus O'Reilly. Seamus is one of 11 siblings, and when he was 5 years old, his mother passed away from breast cancer. So this is the story of his now widowed father bringing up 11 children in the countryside in Derry by himself, and a kind of a look at what his childhood was like, what it was like without having his mother around, and all of the kind of influences that his siblings would have had upon him. Seamus is somebody whose writing I have really enjoyed. There is a Twitter thread that I will post below that is completely hilarious, that involves a miscommunication with work and a former president of Ireland. It's something that I go back to for a giggle every now and then when I need a pick-me-up, and I genuinely cannot wait to see what this book is like. So many people on my timeline have already read it and they have all absolutely loved it. There's a list of all of the books that I shouldn't have bought recently but did anyway. Is there any of them that you think I should start out with, or have you read any of them already? Don't forget to like and subscribe because I have new videos up every week. Now, get on out of here.